Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. NFL free agency kicks off today at noon, and we know who the Falcons quarterback will not be. It will not be Russell Wilson, who signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers over the weekend, and it will not be Baker Mayfield, who re-upped with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not totally surprising. Did not expect the Falcons to really be in on Russell Wilson for personality purposes. But Baker Mayfield is a guy that they were keeping their eye on, but I'm also not surprised that he re-signed with the Buccaneers. It certainly feels like it is Kirk Cousins or bust as we anxiously await his decision. Minnesota's still interested. It seems like it's down to the Vikings and the Falcons. But if it's not Kirk Cousins, I don't know where they pivot. I mean, we say Justin Fields. Adam Schefter's reporting there hasn't been significant interest. Maybe that changes. Maybe their focus purely on Kirk Cousins and telling the Bears, hey, we'll talk about Justin Fields after. Maybe that changes, but it doesn't seem, they do not have a clear option if they do not get Kirk Cousins, which is definitely not a slam dunk.
Yeah, a couple of points. Russell Wilson, not only a personality fit, not a personality fit in Atlanta. I don't know if he's really a personality fit in Pittsburgh either. If anyone can kind of mesh Russell Wilson's personality with a team, I guess it is Mike Tomlin, but also schematic. Like, I don't think he's a perfect schematic fit for Arthur Smith and Zach Robinson. He struggles to throw over the middle of the field. He either throws, bombs or at the line of scrimmage at this point in his career. I don't think that's – so it was, like you said, it was necessary. It was never going to be a fit in Atlanta. With Baker Mayfield, I thought he was a legitimate possibility. Diana Rossini of The Athletic reported after Baker Mayfield signing that, Atlanta was keeping an eye on Baker Mayfield, seemingly as that backup plan for Kirk Cousins. Now, no backup plan, at least an obvious backup plan now to Kirk Cousins. And like some people are saying Kirk Cousins or bust. I wouldn't necessarily put it in those terms because it's basically Kirk Cousins or stopgap, kick the can down the road. And that was always a possibility this offseason. Like if it wasn't Justin Fields, there was a distinct possibility the Falcons were just going to have to go into this season with another stopgap veteran, hopefully better than Taylor Heineke, and kind of either roll the dice in the draft in April or 2025 completely. So this is a real reality we are facing, that like the Falcons could have a Jacoby Brissett starting in 2024 with maybe J.J. McCarthy sitting, or, just looking at the draft class in 2025. Shedeur Sanders is coming out. That would be obviously a fun match right there. But
Carson Beck. How about Carson Beck?
Yeah, again, there's always going to be good quarterbacks. That one Desmond Ridder class was an anomaly where there was just no inspiring options.
Someone just brought up the 2021 class because you're seeing Justin Fields now probably going to get traded. Mac Jones was just traded. Zach Wilson's obviously a bust. Trevor Lawrence hasn't exactly lived up to expectations. Trey Lance was a bust.
He hasn't.
Now you're talking about that was a class that 5 quarterbacks go in the top 15. Everyone expected at least a few franchise guys. The only guy that's potentially a franchise, at least right now, is Trevor Lawrence, and I wouldn't even say yet he has reached that status. So now you look at this draft class, everyone's expecting 4 or 5 guys, stuff like that. Doesn't always work out that way. I mean, it really doesn't. There is the quarterback position, as we always say, is the hardest to get right. But one aspect I want to bring up to you, Alex, and I think this is the most intriguing of them all, is the fact that Terry Fontenot is going into his 4th season, has not produced a winning season. His biggest task in each of the last 3 off seasons has been fix this issue at quarterback, replace Matt Ryan. They haven't done that at all. And you're talking about a general manager. I know, he survived all the heat. And it all went on Arthur Smith and he got fired. But it's all going to start turning on Terry Fontenot if things do not get better. And if they go to another stopgap option, is that something that as a general manager and in your 4th season, you can even take a risk on? So then we talk about that Kirk Cousins thing. What's it going to take to get him out of Minnesota? A ridiculous contract. Like it is going to take, just like when we talked about Lamar Jackson, how the Ravens it had to be a contract so uncomfortable that the Ravens didn't want to match it. It's very similar. Now, it's not going to be as great because Lamar Jackson's obviously younger, MVP, stuff like that. But it has to be a deal that Minnesota looks at and is like, oh, that's a little too much for our rich for our blood.
Yeah, I think if we're speaking to that, I think it's going to be at least 3 years. I'm sure the Vikings want to stay on a 2-year deal, and it's going to approach that $40 million per year And if not fully guaranteed, damn close to fully guaranteed. That's the kind of deal it's going to take to pry Kirk Cousins out of Minnesota. Though I disagree a little bit with the Terry Fontenot assessment. Everything you said is right, except for the fact that, like, what is he going to do? Force a square peg into a round hole? Like you just said, that 21 class hasn't exactly panned out. Now, circumstances matter. We're not exactly sure had any of those guys come to Atlanta, they would be where they're at right now. Maybe they have a little bit more success. That's not to say that's not possible. But also, like, you don't want Terry Fontenot just – shooting from the hip and grabbing a quarterback just to grab a quarterback, where a lot of fans are just wanting Terry Fontenot to do that this year. And I see it more often than not, it's Michael Penix. And that stuff bothers me. You don't just draft a guy to draft a guy. Like you have to like him. You have to believe that you can turn him into a franchise quarterback. You don't just take shots on a quarterback because you're like, well, all the rest of the league is drafting a quarterback. We might as well draft. No, that is not how this works. So yes, it's a rock and a hard place where it's like, yes, Terry Fontenot, it's time to take a shot, get a quarterback, but also you have to be, you have to follow your analysis and your scouting. Yeah, you can't just.
There were shots, and it's not, there's shots in free agency. There's shots that could have been taken to at least make this look better. And whether it's
Baker Mayfield. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield. Last year, the Panthers made that move up the board from 9, jumped the Falcons all the way up to number 1. Now they took Bryce Young, but CJ Stroud was sitting right there. There's been murmurs and stuff that, the Falcons were interested in CJ Stroud. That's something that they could have done. The same way that we're talking about how will you give up 3 first-round picks because we feel desperate to go up there and get Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or whoever it is. They could have done that. That deal was on the table. Yeah. Quite literally, we saw it. It happened.
That's fair.
And gotten Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. And I just don't know how many general managers sit here and make it to year 5 without a winning record and without fixing the biggest issue that's been hamstringing this team for 4 years? Ever since Matt Ryan gone, all we talk about every offseason, who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to be the quarterback? And all we've done is use a 3rd-round pick on it. That's a direct shot at your GM. There's not many GMs that just get to lose 4 straight seasons and keep their jobs.
Yeah, I think, with that being said, Terry Fontenot has absolutely, I know you believe this too, Terry Fontenot has absolutely done a very good job as GM. But you could do everything wrong and get the quarterback position right, and you'll always be regarded as a good GM. It doesn't matter because it's the most important thing in this sport. So I'm a little fence sitting and playing both sides. I do get your point, and I agree with a lot of things you said, but I also do think that the Bryce Young thing, trading up last year, that was the thing. And I firmly believe Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, it doesn't matter, would have worked well. Arthur Smith would still have his job today had the Falcons drafted one of those 2 guys. I'm saying Bryce Young last year or CJ Stroud takes the Falcons to the playoffs. I firmly believe that. So I do agree. That is a blunder. But again, hindsight 2020, what they gave up, what you'd have to give up Kyle Pitts, yada, yada, yada. It was a decision to be made. Now we're sitting here 1 year later, and it's why didn't you make that? Now you got to make one for Jaden Daniels, Drake May, one of those guys. And Terry Fontenot's feet are definitely against the fire here this offseason.
This isn't enough. This is a league where, you get axed. Get axed if you do not perform, if you do not make the playoffs. And the Falcons, if they don't get a quarterback. We just talked about the Falcons being NFC favorites last week. That's if they get Kirk Cousins or if they had got Baker Mayfield. All of a sudden, if they don't get one of ththose guys, there's no way you're putting him in front of the Bucs. The Bucs are a clearly better team, better quarterback. They should be the favorites to win the division. Coming off a game where they won a playoff game, where they won the NFC South, where they beat a Falcons on the road when we had a chance to do something.
Should have beat them. Had every opportunity to beat them.
I just don't know. Because listen, Raheem Morris's head's not going to roll in year 1.
No,
someone's head's going to roll at the end of this season if the Falcons do not make the playoffs.
See,
I believe that.
I don't believe that only because of who the owner is. Arthur Blank is not. I just don't believe how long. I don't remember exactly how long. Well, Thomas Dimitroff lasted both Dan Quinn and Mike Smith. I just think
Thomas Dimitroff won in his playoffs in his first year.
Yeah, but I just think I was going to say that case relates to this. It doesn't at all. But Arthur Blank is just the type of owner who's going to give his guy the benefit of the doubt. I think he probably wanted to give Arthur Smith that 4th season. And enough noise around it. He's like, I got to do something. We got to win. And now Arthur Blank didn't fire Arthur Smith to lose. I get your point. But again, if they go into this season without a stable quarterback, you're a fool to expect them to improve.
I agree, but I think like your job as a general manager is to figure it out and find a way to get a quarterback and build a roster around them to win a game. Yeah. When you have 4 opportunities, like I'm not like this isn't the first shot. We're almost acting like this is a new opportunity for Terry Fontenot. No, he's had 4 shots at like finding a trade partner, signing a free agent, doing all of these things. Listen, look at the Bucs. Like you just said, Baker Mayfield, like they're quite literally, if they win the division again, got 2 divisions with a guy that you could have had for $3-4 million and you paid double that to get Taylor Heineke. So listen, you can blame Arthur Smith, and I'm sure he had a lot of.
He certainly had a lot of.
He definitely had a say. And listen, I like Terry Fontenot. Like I'm rooting for him to stick with this. I'm just saying, there's got to be some sort of, you're going into your 4th season. We haven't fixed this quarterback position. It's your job. It's not my job. It's not your job. It's not even Arthur Blank's job to fix this. It is your job to get this and figure it out. Figure it out. It really is that simple. Figure it out. And we haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look back, so obviously the first offseason, they were rolling with Matt Ryan pretty much no matter what, ended up taking Kyle Pitts instead of Mac Jones or Justin Fields. Trey Lance and Zach Wilson and obviously Trevor Lawrence were off the board. Hindsight 2020, maybe made a good decision. Who knows how those guys, Mac and Justin Fields, would have panned out in Atlanta with better supporting cast and everything like that. Who knows? And then the following year, there were many inspiring options. We know they went after Deshaun Watson. That blew up in their face. They ended up with Marcus Mariota. And then last offseason, they had, like you said, they could have made that deal with the Panthers made. They had a better pick. The 8th overall pick is a better pick than the 9th pick. So they very could have well had that pick. We'll see what Terry Fontenot does this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. You mentioned Deshaun Watson, too. They one of their big splashes, the biggest move that they tried to go get was Deshaun Watson under Terry Fontenot's watch. And you can say Arthur Blank, I'm sure, played a big role in that.
I think he was the driving force.
And there are circumstances that all have to be taken into it. And if Arthur Blank feels that maybe it's a little bit of his fault that he went after Deshaun Watson and stuff like that, maybe he's a little softer on Terry Fontenot. But Deshaun Watson was their big swing at this thing. And obviously that fell through the cracks. Thank God it fell through the cracks for several reasons that we do not have to get into. But it's just, I think that's an intriguing aspect in all this, because I do feel like beyond just us as fans.
Well, and then they came out and just, listen, the Falcons were never going to get Lamar Jackson, but it was hilarious that they immediately came out and they're like, we don't want Lamar Jackson. Like that.
We don't need him.
We don't need him. We don't need the MVP.
At this point, I would have done anything for that. But I think I speak for most Falcons fans. Coming up after the break, we're going to get into there's a few stars on the block that are officially on the block that came out this week, and we're going to discuss it.